Psychotechnologies Live. Welcome to a very special episode of Psychotechnologies Live. Today we are going to be covering the Metacrisis. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. If you are not a fan of anxiety and fear and afraid of the world at large, and you get triggered easily by the collapse of civilization, then may I suggest you skip this episode and go to a more fun, interesting episode where we don't talk about heavy things and we just chill and vibe. Because this episode, we're getting heavy with the Metacrisis.
Okay, help me out here. Like, what do you mean by the Metacrisis?
Good question, Elliot. I'm glad you asked it. So the title is How to Fix the Metacrisis Psychotechnology. So we're going to go through the Metacrisis, then we're going to explain what we think the relationship with psychotechnology is with it, and then we're going to propose some some solutions or ways of doing it. If you thought that we had all the answers to the Metacrisis in this episode, I'm sorry to disappoint. It's just
no, we don't know how many answers we have. We haven't decided yet. We'll work that out as we go along.
Yeah, but it's about the journey, maybe. Or is it? We'll find out. So the Metacrisis, what is the Metacrisis? So essentially, civilization is fucked in a bunch of ways. Not predicting whether it's going to collapse or what the prognosis of it is, but there are these massive problems with our societies and our let's say first world countries.
Right. Can you name a few? Which ones are we talking about?
And also the large. So we have. I'm getting to that later.
Okay.
We got a bunch of them. So the obvious ones are ecological or climate ecological collapse. So the bees are dying and biodiversity is down. Farmlands are kind of not doing so well because the dirt keeps getting eroded away. We got climate changes is a big one. AOC said 4 years ago that the world's going to end in 12 years. So we only got 8 left. Then we got what other stuff is there actually? There's birth rates are down huge. The huge one is fertility. Whether that's fertility or other issues, birth rates are down insane. Most countries are not. Most developed countries are not being able to replace their populations, which is pretty crazy.
Pollution is up.
Huh?
Pollution is up, both plastics and gas.
Sure. Yeah, we're all the plastics in the ocean.
We're leaning into an energy crisis in various locations in the world. We're running out of things to burn on the general level, but also on the geopolitical situation.
Maybe
we're trying to transition to solar, but we're not even there yet.
Yeah, energy crisis could be a thing. Raw resources. So as people are industrialized, there's all these, what do they call it? Essential minerals or all these very small, lithium and all these valuable minerals that are very hard to find. And, we might not be able to scale that up. COVID messed up our systems. Now we have this we have this virus that we don't know where it came from.
Well, it created a man-made drama for all of us. Different governments responded differently, and then different health systems managed in different ways, and here we are still kind of recovering from it.
Yeah. And we got the rise of the alt-right, alt-left. Let's say
right, an extremity of politics on both sides, on both sides of the two-side system.
Yeah, huge polarization. I just watched this whole video on dating and how shout out to What If Altist. The dating scene is apparently terrible. The numbers are so down, it's very difficult.
Wasn't it always terrible though?
But
I don't know. I met a guy last night who was the day I met he's 70 or so. He's the day I met my wife, I went, I'm going to marry you. And then he did. But, that's how you used to do it back then. The times of the dinosaurs.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so terrible.
Right. I don't think that happens anymore today. Not in the same way.
Well, people don't talk about it. I assume it happens. But yeah, I think it's not normal. I think it's normal to be on Tinder and be frustrated for years and decades. So that's just normal. So yeah, so there's all these problems.
Is that all of them, or there's a few more?
This is not all of them, but I don't remember. I'm not Metacrisis expert here. I like kind of did a bunch of the Metacrisis stuff, and then I'm like, this is not healthy for me. I'm going to move over to Psychotech because I think what starts to happen. I think one of the big things with the Metacrisis is there's the Metacrisis, but then there's like the Metacrisis, which is, so the Metacrisis, like you have all these collections of all these things, but then you have all these people trying to solve those problems. And those people that try to solve those problems, like some of them are good and they do the stuff well, and that's fine. But like a lot of the times, like they mess it up and they make the problem worse, and they start trying to pull society in different directions, or even like the way they're pulling it starts to be very more damaging than the problem itself. So I think like one of the really cool, I mean, it's not cool, but it's interesting, I guess. Things that I've seen around is that, our current our current carbon emissions is essentially caused by the environmentalists in the 70s because they shut down nuclear power. And so, because they shut down nuclear power, all these countries are still on coal or natural gas. And that has like way more carbon emission, way more damaging for people, for the environment, than nuclear power would have been. Also, that causes like the political instability, right? When you have like Germany, like now we, for people living in the future, we're still in the Ukraine-Russia war. And there's like a lot of Europe is dependent on Russia for fossil fuels to keep their houses warm during the winter, and that's pretty problematic for everyone. And if Germany, if all these other countries were on nuclear power, then they wouldn't be burning fossil fuels and they wouldn't be dependent on these other places. So yeah, political instability is also another one that people talk about, because like Russia and China are having major problems, and they're kind of like that counterbalance. Okay, so this is just like a ramble of all the problems in our societies today. If you've been on the internet ever, then you'll know that these exist, and you'll know some of them, and you probably know ones that I haven't said. So okay, what's next?
So I actually thought you were talking about something else when we started this conversation, which is we started before we hit record, which is the meaning crisis.
Right. So I think, yeah, so this is the way sort of that I think we're both orienting towards it, is that like all these things kind of exist, and then there's this other problem, or there's this problem that causes it. There's this problem that has a relationship to these, which is the meaning crisis. So essentially people today don't live what they would consider meaningful lives. So a lot of people I don't know how to say this nicely. I always have trouble.
Right. So there's an interesting thing already, like the way you described the global problems. It's sort of from a external and collective angle, like the climate change is like the planet is dying, the ecology, the politics. It's all of this external big problem, right? The way I describe the meaning crisis is internal subjective. Like I see how terrible politics is, and I don't want to get in it, and I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to get engaged, right? And so that's like all of the meaning making that I could possibly make is like falling away. I see like movie stars, and suddenly they're all on Twitter and they're saying dumb things, and I'm like, oh, I don't like those people anymore. And what I used to project onto them as like cooldom because they were in movies or something is like falling away. And they're like, I don't care about sports because I'm a nerd, and like I don't care about, what else don't I care about? Billionaires seem to be crazy or selfish or like other things when I get like impressions of them. Like the places I used to put my like, oh, I want to be like that guy, are now starting to like fall away. Like I don't want to join the army. That's like, I belong to a country without conscription. Call me nuts, but like I don't want to join the army either. Like where am I going to get my like do good things and have a great life if all of my like highest towers of meaning making, including like go be famous and like go run a religion, like religions are not usually in the news for good reasons. There's a lot of like abuse going on that gets reported. Like suddenly I'm like, oh, I don't want to head over there either. I'm going like, all of the big things out there to care about are suddenly not big things that I want to be caring about. I'm like, should I just stay home? Like, should I grow vegetables in my garden and care about those and about no one else? Is that the way to do it? Well, maybe, but also like there's this crisis of meaning making, particularly like imagine you have a party and you invite a famous footballer and a famous movie star and like the Pope and like who else can we, like a politician, like the leader of a country. Who is the most important person in the room? Like, oh no, we have just so many ladders of like different important people that like we can't really tell him it. Like, is it like who makes the most money? Is it like
that's like a Game of Thrones line.
Script for a joke, right? The one guy says to the other, I can pick up the phone and like order a war strike on a country, and then other guy's like, well, I can pick up the phone and there'll be a bunch of women like knocking down my door, and another guy's like, oh yeah, well guess I can call God, and like some sort of bad joke or something. But like there are so many different meaning makings, like which one do I want to subscribe to? Also, they're all terrible because we live in this world of social media in which we get all of the bad news about them as well. Like none of them look like the good one anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking of the meta crisis. Like it's meta in terms of our like meta relational with it, not just like these problems like climate change, right? I don't feel like I can do a thing about it because I'm like some tiny consumer in some country somewhere that has no impact on the entire engine of society and how much pollution it's making and whether it's planting enough trees to save the world. Like I feel like I have no power over it, and so like much as that seems like a cool thing to work on, it seems like useless to even bother wasting my time because I have zero impact, or like so close to zero impact that it doesn't feel like I should participate. And I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling this phenomena of like, why would I participate?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been thinking about that as more the meaning crisis,
right? But and that goes. Like, I feel like that's just as big as the meta crisis, or like interweaves with the meta.
I see it. I see the meaning crisis as kind of the linchpin to the meta crisis. Is like, how do you like, because like to solve the meta crisis, you got to coordinate, you got to find out what reality is, you got to you got to do all these things. You got to accumulate resources, you got to use them properly, you got to trust. You got to do all these things, and I think what happens is we're not able to do any of those things,
right?
Or we're not able to do those things well at scale. And I think a lot of that comes down to the way we make meaning, or the way we cohere.
So I've kind of had this experience where I've had to just do nothing for a while, in quotation marks. Like I've had to hang out with my friends and form an echo chamber and like agree with them on a bunch of stuff, and like in order to like feel my ground and feel the shape of a couple different people. And then I can head back out into the world where everything's way more complicated and like try and start making sense of it. Like there's been this need to like pull back before I'm got anything useful to say.
Yeah.
And like before we started Psychotechnologies, I was like on my own reading a lot of books, being like, what on earth is going on?
Yeah. So let's I think you're diving into the meta crisis now, into the meaning crisis, or into your relationship with it. I do think, I do think that there are people out there that want to solve the meaning crisis, or want to solve the meta crisis, want to solve the meaning crisis, want to do all these things. And like you're kind of doing, and like I think the the sort of like cultural version of this that you're saying is go clean your room. It's but it's essentially like go home and hang out with some friends and like get grounded, get in touch with what your personal life is like.
Well, there's some sense of like what you can actually do on a personal level, and I do actually think I have a big impact. Like I talk to my friends, and then they talk to their friends, and then like they talk to everyone else. That's like, how many steps away do I go that if I'm having good relationships with my friends, there's this like shockwave of like enjoying each other and having a great time in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could be very powerful if I believe that I can make a difference with people.
Yeah. So to sort of like step outside and see what you're doing. I think kind of what's going on, like I think kind of what's going on is you're describing for us now the way you meaning make. Like how do you meaning make on a practical level?
Right.
And I think there is this idea in rationality, politics is the mind killer, where as soon as you jump into politics, everybody loses their shit. Like everybody loses their mind. They can't think clearly. They get tribal. They get all these things. And I think politics stuff is important, but to have this like grounding of who am I as a person.
Well, maybe it's possible that we are not mature enough to do politics yet. Like some quality of like, if I am losing my shit, I need to like personally, I need to like go away and think about it. Like, that's me calling myself out for being not mature enough to be in the room.
Yeah. And I think that does have a huge, that kind of attitude does have a huge impact on politics or on really anybody trying to get things done, like to coordinate on large scales or to do things. If the people are self-selecting, like the people show up and they realize that they're going to be more harm than good, like if they're going to panic, or if they're going to have, when I took CPR and first aid, they would tell us like, in like lifeguarding, it's like always your first responsibility is to not add a new victim.
Right.
Like that's
not to freak out yourself. You're like, oh my God, someone's dying. What do I do? Oh no, what do I do? And then there's like two people that need to be taken care of.
Right. There's a burning fire. There's something dangerous, and you can't handle it. Like your job is to like call someone and to get out of there, and like to not like to like I just say like you can like tell the people I just saved someone's life for you so that you wouldn't have to. And that's not nothing. Like that's adulting. Like I think that's what it means.
Taking care of yourself is a pretty big part of the equation.
Yeah. And if that's all you can do right now, then that's okay, and that's good actually. So you're actually like you're taking a little piece of it, and you're helping.
I've realized there's another really interesting piece of the puzzle. So the shape of some of these big world problems, like climate change, right? It feels like the hardest problem I've ever tried to solve, right? It feels bigger than me. It feels scarier than me. It feels overwhelming. It feels like we're all going to die if I don't solve it. It feels like I need to run in the streets and scream at people because like, oh no, the sky is falling. And in some sense, that's a really unhelpful response. In some sense, that's like kind of the right response, because maybe it is actually happening depending on who you talk to, and like happening with great urgency depending on who you talk to. But in some sense, that's the wrong way to respond to it. Like, I'm suddenly drawn to, have you ever heard of the recordings of astronauts as they like talk through a problem that they're like, the oxygen's not working? Oh, it's fascinating. It's this phenomena of calm under pressure. They're like, oh, my suit has lost oxygen pressure. Let me just try this. Let me just try that. And they're like 30 seconds and they're dead, like, because my suit has lost oxygen pressure. I'm just going to try this. And
they're in like outer space, like they're in the middle of nothing.
Yeah, and like at the like Houston on the ground, and everyone's like shitting themselves because their suit lost pressure, right? And he's up there, no one else can help him because he's the astronaut, like, very, very calmly, like, okay, I'm gonna like diagnostic. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna like, if he doesn't get through that list, he might die. Sort of like that list in the wrong order, he might die. Like the calm under pressure thing, right? Amazing. But
I love this. I love this as like, your story of, there's all these people in the room. So I'm now imagining the astronaut in the room, and it's like, he's like, well, I could be 30 seconds away from death, and I'm going to be calm and do the best I can.
Figure out what I need to do to make sure I'm still alive. Right.
Yeah.
But what we're doing with, let's go for climate change, or like, the other example is like AI, right? Like AI alignment. If we don't align the AI, it'll just kill us all. It's like,
I forgot AI alignment. That's a big one too.
It's anyway.
How could I forget?
There's some quality of like emotional. There's like an emotional well of great negative experience that I relate to the big crisis with, like the climate change, right? Like I've known people who have felt overwhelmed and burned out by the amount of processing they were doing because they felt like it was so dangerous that they had to go do those things emotionally. Like their emotions were like, we have to do it, right?
Yeah.
There's something like on the personal level in terms of, we're talking psychotechnologies now, like how do I relate to the big bad? the it.
Right.
And like in this case, it's climate change. But when I was a 5-year-old, it was the dark. Right? Like, how do me as an individual relate to the big bad? And that's a super important skill as a adult, as becoming an adult, of like knowing it's the big bad, but not being controlled by how bad it is or how looming it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a skill there. There's a skill of getting closer to the experience of the emotion of the big bad and not letting it overwhelm.
Yeah, I think that's like, to me, that like you just nailed it on, like you hit the hammer on the head, the nail on the head, that there's like this starts, this whole thing aligns, right? As soon as you realize this, where whatever level you're going to exist on, you need to be calm and, realize that, calm, make good decisions, realize that you might lose, like you might die. And
also you want to be at the top of your game to face it.
Yeah, always. But like not this moment on top, but over time on top. Is like, especially with Metacrisis stuff, right? Like astronauts, maybe they need to be on top while they're outside, and then they're going to take breaks and stuff. But mostly they still probably have to be on top of their game all the time. Like they're in this little box in space. Like that's insane. Like they're just
like, I will sleep while you watch the oxygen dials for me. They need to actually trust their co-astronauts very, very, very well.
Yeah, the whole space thing is insane. If you think about it.
I mean, there's space and there's also submarines. Submarines are equally like,
submarines are also scary. Yeah.
But like become a well-oiled machine of like support.
Yeah.
Each other. I mean, this is like
and that's like, I think that's the kind of attitude that we're taking in a way, like not necessarily the specifics, but that whole, like we're on a spaceship, right? Like we're on spaceship Earth, and it happens to be that it's very big, and you don't have to really worry that much about oxygen, but like people do with people, we have to worry about temperature, we have to worry about we do also have to worry about oxygen, right? Like if all the plants start dying, if the ecological
if we get too far off balance, if we get too far out of balance, we may not bounce back. Like is in the oxygen.
Like that CO2 balance needs to be, the CO2 needs to be scrubbed on Earth the same way it needs to be scrubbed in space, in a space station, or in a submarine. It's just like the scale is bigger. And there's no like the other cool thing is that like space station people, like astronauts, they get to come back to Earth, right, every year, couple months, and same with submarine people, seamen, mariners, they got to come back. But like for us, like on Earth, there's no, like, where are we coming back to? Right, so we're we're here.
This is home A, they call it planet A.
Right. There's no like, okay, Earth is too much, I need to go somewhere else for now. Minute, but I think there kind of is, right? Like you talked about it with your, when you're going with your friends and in your home, like you need that place that you can go back to where you're like, this is safe, I can recuperate, I can rest, I can recover. And I think that's
in order that I can then go attack the Metacrisis again in whichever way I'm committed to.
Right, and I can do it well rested and not ragged.
Yeah.
There is something about also the so like kind of like if you're zooming in here where you're saying, okay, you're going to go there, and then I want to, people, I think we often tend to be, oh, you're going to go home and rest, and like home is this black box and it's a thing people do. But like taking it one step further, what is, like, let's open that box. What does it look like? What does it look like to be at home with your friends and like having that be regenerative.
What is a regenerative personal resource?
Regenerative. Yeah. I mean, and then I think like the next step, like for us, obviously the psychotech is like one step further. What's it like to be alone and regenerative? So, we can talk about introverts, extroverts, but there is, like everyone does gain and lose energy when they're with people and when they're by themselves, right? Just on a very general level. And I think when you're by yourself and you're doing the techniques, you're doing the meditation is usually, or awakening or whatever. Or you're doing the psychotech, and that's the thing that's there. So okay, so this is like a broad overview, I think.
Is there any of the Metacrisis that concerns you particularly? Personally?
So any of the Metacrisis that concerns me, honestly, like not that much.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious why not as well, but
it used to, but then like a bunch of things happened, and I feel pretty good with it. So, like I think a lot of it I think is just like people don't understand how things work, and so there's a lot of things that are overblown that are,
like I would be like the bees are actually recovering. The bees are all right. There were some bees that died. Yeah. It's kind of going okay-ish.
Yeah, like it's not good. I'm not encouraging it and stuff, but a lot of this stuff, yeah, like it does bounce back. We are going to lose, there's a certain acceptance of we are going to lose a lot of biodiversity. That's, just how things go.
There's also this silly perspective that we must retain biodiversity even if it's not useful to us.
I think it's good. Like I think one day we will want that, and
we might.
We, as stewards of the future, we should be taking care of that. So,
maybe.
Like I'm not advocating.
At the same time, we've always like dug holes and built big buildings and knocked over things and placed where we want them. But at the same time, like we seem to be doing a lot more damage recently.
Yeah, and the scale, the scale that we're at is pretty impactful.
Mm-hmm.
But like this is how it is. Like it does suck. Like you talked about Australia before, where the natives or the colonists or whatever like went to Australia and like killed a lot of the biodiversity there. And it does suck that we don't have dodos, right? I would love to go to the store and have the options of turkey, chicken, and dodo.
You're even talking about eating them. I mean, I would like to just see them in the zoo, like see.
Yeah, them. Or maybe they're good pets. I don't know. That would be like a thing like that. We could have had that, but the previous generations didn't steward the land properly, and so we don't get that.
It's also like, do we even need sloths? Like they don't seem all that useful, helpful. They're not even particularly good pets.
There's like a whole thing. There's like, oh my god, we shouldn't get into that. There's like a whole thing with like sloths in the ecosystems because I don't know what it is, but
they do something particularly valuable.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
Like I kind of like.
Like they contribute in some way to the ecosystem.
I think so, because they do. Their sloths are super weird with their ecological niche is so weird because they just like sit around and eat plants, and they don't digest it very well. So they're very slow, right? Like they're essentially like really like one of the dumbest animals, like mammals at least.
Right.
And like their whole thing, like they're like, how we're talking about like the dating crisis and all that stuff here. Like they also have a dating crisis where they have to go down the tree and like poop on the ground and then like find another tree to climb up where someone else's poop is there that they would want to mate with. It's and that's huge. That's so hard for them to do. It's like the riskiest part of their life.
There's this so I don't know which way to go on that one. The like stewardship of animals. Like
okay, whatever. It's I think for us is the thing I'm looking at is not how do we solve these individual crises or what is important about them, but more like the approach and the perspective and remaining calm and keeping perspective on things. I think is a lot of the stuff. And so for me, there is like a lot of I think every single generation has thought that they were going to destroy the world or like that the world could end. And the thing is, like, a lot of them were right, right? Like they could have, if not destroyed the world, at least like destroyed their civilization or destroyed their group of people. So like, I always like move into Jewish stuff because that's like my growing up education. And we literally the Passover Seder, which is like the ritual meal, the ritual stuff we do on Passover, is like every generation we almost get wiped out. And there's like we go through like a bunch of them at the Seder, and then there's like a bunch of Jewish holidays where it's like, hey, this is the time that these people tried to genocide us, and this is the time that these people tried to genocide us. And we stopped even doing individual holidays for a lot of them because we had to stack them, because otherwise like every day would be
they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat.
Yeah, or they did kill us and now we can't eat. It's a fast day.
Yeah.
But like that's like a lot of most of the Jewish holidays are like that. And
okay, so why
at a certain time you got to accept this is the human condition. Like this is how we live as humans.
Why do none of the metacrises bother you?
They don't. So there's a bunch of things that happen, but so this is the big one is that like this is actually normal. Which is like kind of fucked up in a way.
You realized this was normal in some way. What helped you realize that?
So big one was like having a kid. A lot of that stuff. It like it's like not intellectual. It's like practical, right? Because kids die, and there's a lot of things that could kill them, and also overprotection is one of those things. And so like, I never got helicopter parenting before I became a parent, and now I get it.
Why on earth would someone be a helicopter parent?
Yeah, like as a kid, I'm like go away, like let me live my life. And as a parent, I'm like, oh my god, this person could die.
Right, this
you don't know anything.
Who doesn't know what knives are could just die.
Dude, he loves knives. Like he grabs knives and like plays with it, right? And he loves fire. He didn't have any fear of fire, which is like freaked me out. Like he saw fire, and like the first time he saw a fire, he like, went to go touch it, and I was like, what are you doing? How is this not programmed into children? Like animals are scared of fire, right? Like why aren't children?
I don't know if they are necessarily scared of fire in the beginning.
In all the movies they are. You like ward off the animals with the fire.
Oh, like if you swing it at them and like scare the bear sort of thing. But I'm thinking
if I
of
swing it at him, he's gonna think it's a toy and want to try to touch it.
Right. It's more like humans have control over big powerful things. Like I imagine like your house cat, if you lit a candle, would your house cat come and like try and touch them? Probably.
I don't know.
Like I think a dog would sit by the fire. It might not.
No, yeah, it was a fire pit. Like there was like a little bonfire, and he went to go touch it.
Right.
Which is crazy to me. But anyway, like the thing is like there's so many things, not everything, but there's a lot of like innocuous things that could kill him.
Right.
Like some of like the main dangers are like hot dogs, candy, peanut butter, both because the allergen and also because peanut butter is sticky. And if they eat it and it can get caught in their throat and then block the airway. Toilets, kids actually drown at toilets.
Yeah, because they could fall in and not really be able to climb out so easy.
Yeah. Baths, obviously. Stairs. Cars. Yeah, he doesn't because I'm like on top of it, but I suspect that he would just run into traffic just for just impulsively, just because like cars are cool.
Right. And
right? So there's
this is making you less concerned about the metacrisis.
So this just like okay, so I'm like with it. So like imagine like us as humans, doing all these things that are going to kill us. And so there's something about like I'm with a human that does a lot of things that are that lives a life where they could easily kill themselves. And like there's just a certain acceptance of death and the possibility thereof.
What danger?
It's not
there's a certain getting used to danger, or
yeah, like it's not like becoming numb to it, and it's not just like, okay, I'm going to trick myself or whatever. It's actually seeing dangers and actually living in the world where it's dangerous. And when you live in the world where, and also like a lot of the meditation of accepting death, it normalizes death, where death is a part of life and this is a thing that happens. and every day I live I could die, and every moment I'm, like not that I'm 100% there, but for me
death is one heartbeat away, or like lack of heartbeat.
yeah. Like you could just stop existing
Yeah.
with no warning. And like when you live that way, like with that like radical acceptance of death and radical acceptance of the death of the ones that you love. So I think some people can go numb or can go whatever. For me, it's interesting. Like I feel more alive. Because like it's interesting, like when like you take these risks that could kill you, there's like this rush. So I get a little bit of that all the time because I'm alive and being alive could kill me.
I'm suspicious because I'm like worried about there's like a failure mode where I just run on adrenaline all the time.
No, but it's not like that. Okay. Or maybe, yeah, you have a little bit of adrenaline all the time.
Yeah, I guess it depends on if you're actually resting and recovering and recuperating, or if you're just constantly running on the like last resort energy. Because adrenaline's designed sort of in our bodies as a last resort energy. It's not meant to be the sustained form of activity. I think I use that a bit. I use a bit too much adrenaline.
I think that the main thing is to get the adrenaline without the cortisol.
So yeah, that's the stress hormone.
Yeah, so you don't like. I think a lot of people run on cortisol where they have this relationship with the possibility of death and the possibility of, let's say in the Metacrisis, the possibility of humanity getting wiped out, and like they react with this like this cortisol, which is like this. I shouldn't like the. It's hard to explain, but it's very like non-productive, very panicky, very looking for calm or looking for like reassurance. Like when people are like this constant reassurance, or like, okay, or the other one is the other side of that is it's either looking for reassurance or they're like, okay, this is the most thing ever and nothing else matters, and I'm going to like burn the world down to save it. Mm. And you don't want to do that. Like that's bad. Like that's like most of the problems we have today are because the people before us were using like having that attitude and living in that way. And I think like for me, it's like having that good relationship with death and having that good relationship with the possibility of me and everyone I know dying. Lets me handle it better. And that's the main thing. Like if you want to
so options, your other option would be to
what do you mean?
So your current option is like you describe sort of having a relationship with the possibility of dying, and your other option would be what exactly?
So I think practically speaking, people have the option of panicking and then doing stuff and making it worse. And like that's the thing, like you need to, if you're doing that, you need to back off, because like the base rate is that the thing will sort itself out. And if you're there, you're lowering the odds of that happening.
Right. So that's if you're panicking. If you're panicking, you got to work out how to stop. And then you've got this like having a neutral relationship.
It's like a pretty good relationship, right?
Okay, having a good relationship with like the possibility of death. And somewhere in the middle is also the neutral one of like death just kind of is.
Well, so I think that's a previous stage, right? So there is the stage of death exists and this is how it is. And you accept that, right? Like the same way, anything that you're just learning about, you accept this is how things are, this is what the world is. And, then over time you're like interacting with it. So like engineers, for instance, like let's just like bring that example. When you're first learning it, it's this is how the world is, right? This is how physics works, this is how tensile strengths, all this stuff works, and you're accepting that that's what it is, and you're testing it and you're seeing it. But then as you're playing around with the ideas, you start to build a relationship with it. And so like I don't have a good relationship with engineering. I never learned it. I don't know how it works. But someone who's been doing that a long time is like, yeah, I can like play with all these ideas and do all these things because I'm like skirting around and I'm finding the loopholes of reality. And normally you can't do this, but if you put these things together, then you can. So like cooking, I have a good relationship with, and there was a time where, when you're making chocolate, you can't add water to it or the chocolate will seize, and you can't. And when you're doing cream, like when you're making like a mousse, you got to add things to it. But there's this like weird interaction on the chemistry that if you add enough water to the chocolate and don't add anything else, you can make a mousse just chocolate and water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this cool thing, but you gotta like do it right, or it's not gonna work, or it's gonna seize and be disgusting. And so like when you're, and so it's not for me to judge what are the rules of chemistry. Like I could come in and say, oh, it sucks that chemistry is that way, if only it was different. But that doesn't do anything. Like that's not real. Like stop doing that, accept that this is what it is, and then start to make the best of it. And then as you do that, you can start to become the master of these things. You start to become bigger than it.
Right. I mean, so we're kind of like building the psychotech now. They're like start getting to know the thing that you fear the most. If you want to work on, let's say, climate change, the hardest problem that you're going to have to get to know your fear before you can work on it.
Yeah. Because like we have think about, like, if you think about it, the climate change activists are essentially like, if you're going to start worrying about climate change, then you're kind of in this category of climate change activism, which is, somewhat of a descendant of environmentalist movement. Not to get too into the weeds there, but just sort of like this general thing of people trying to take control and decide what people are allowed to do, and how pollution, like how we should treat our the ecosystem of our planet.
Mm-hmm.
And like they kind of, a lot of people, they kind of fucked it up, and they kind of messed it up in a lot of ways. And I'm not here to judge them, because I don't know what it was like then, and they did do a lot of good things as well, like getting rid of the DDT and some recycling, I think. And probably, like the pollution of rivers and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of stuff they did that was good, and a lot of stuff they did that wasn't good. And you got to be careful that, you got to be careful what you're doing. And then you got to do it. And like that execution, like figuring out what it is that we should do and then doing it is also right. Like if you're going to start doing these, I think the current, US, let's say like AOC stuff, I think is, the green plan, or I forgot what it's called.
I have no idea what that is.
The Green New Deal, I think it was called that. These are American politics, which is pretty much Canada politics, because we don't do our own politics. We just do American. Because I don't know. Whatever. That's a different. Politics itself is also like is also like part of that, right? Like if you're doing environmentalism, there's no real environmentalism without like you can't do that without.
What is that thing? I've mentioned a few times the like not interested in politics, right? That like politicians are clearly all corrupt or whatever. I'm not interested. What is the I kind of like stumbled into, what is the emotion underneath that?
Politicians are all corrupt,
right?
So I mean, there's a bunch of them, but because technically that's just a statement of fact, right? So there's a relationship with it.
Well, I don't know if they all are on, but it feels like they are, and so I'm not that interested in going, because it feels pretty uninviting or not valuable to participate in.
Yeah, like you have to, like politics is performative, right? Like everyone's doing the thing, because like the way you win at politics is getting the most votes, right? Or getting people on your side.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're essentially like putting on this play of, I am this character doing this thing, and we will do, and so there's like, you lose all that authenticity already. And part of playing that game is not stopping to update. Like it's just you just got to keep going and like have this confidence, charisma.
What's the feeling
for me?
Yeah, that you have towards politics.
Yeah, it varies a lot. But a lot of the times it's like anger or contempt.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
there's a lot of contempt.
I don't want to go towards my contempt. Those things are contemptible in the world.
Yeah.
But also, like we've been saying, if you want to get to working on that meta crisis, time to get to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like for me, like it's like I know a lot of the limits, right? So for me, politics, I'm like, these guys, like I'm not going to get into politics because politics is insane. Like I can't handle that. So that's like a big thing is like when I, before at the beginning, like when I was with the effective altruism movement, I was, trying to do things that I didn't have the ability to do. And I didn't know I didn't have the ability to do it. And part of youth is doing things that you don't have the ability to do. And
Or at least trying to do things
limits
beyond your capacity. Like before you discover that they're beyond your capacity. Like, great.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah.
Tried in that direction for a while.
Yeah. And part of that, sorry?
We should reward your efforts for trying in that direction for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think reality did reward that for like, cause like I wouldn't have found Psychotech, I think, if I didn't go through the effective altruism movement. So that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
And like in a weird way, like this is, I still feel like I am like where like this is meta, like the effective altruism, you have meta, or you have like raising the sanity waterline, which is more like rationality, I think, but like this is kind of what we're doing, right? Like it's people are insane and and like like and me too, right? Like I'm also insane, right? I'm not but
okay, the feelings. Let's go back to the feeling.
Okay.
Feeling towards politics. You said like contempt, you said a couple others.
It's for me, it's like a ball of stress, I think, is the main one. Like so it's like this bundle of anxiety and pressure and like fakeness and like when I feel called, like when you're saying like politics, like if we're gonna start to do politics and I would feel called towards that, I feel like I would have to move into performative, because that's your job, right? Like as a politician is to do the things versus like most of life, like when I'm with my kid, there's like a little bit of performative sometimes, but it's like very fun and very obvious, right? So like we do the ta-da, like I'll do something and like, yeah, look what I did. Sometimes I do it, sometimes he does it, but there's like this genuine relationship, and there's no like I feel like he's got my back. If I went into politics, like I don't see any of these politicians having my back. And me as a citizen, or me as a country, right? Like whatever, identity I'm taking in, even, it's like I don't see them. Like I don't think I don't see them as doing that. There's like a couple of them I think follow their ideals, but
so my point here is there's something worth examining. Anytime there's a negative emotion, there's something worth examining. Like, is not that I want to convince you to go into politics today or tomorrow or ever, especially if you don't want to, but if there's a negative feeling, it's probably worth examining. Particularly, like, someone's got to do politics in the world. Like, we might as well not hate them for trying
to. Really, that's the thing. It's like if I was like dictator, I would just shut down most of the stuff. Like most of it does not need to be done from that perspective, right? Like the world can, like, people are alive. Like I think there's a thing where it sucks like it sucks all the people that want to make the world better, and it sucks them into this system that is
it
like
burns up their time and energy and prevents them from doing too much change, because
it's necessarily corrupt. Like I think the way new atheists feel about religion is the way I feel about government, where it's like, oh, if we didn't have government, imagine all the things, like imagine what the world would be like.
Right. And chances are that if we didn't have government, things would actually be worse and more complicated, or
whatever. Like, yeah, like I get that there is some level of governance that is needed. I'm not that naive, but anymore. But like looking at the, like if we're looking at it on the margins, like the margins don't need to be there for the government. And that's the thing that I'm most of the time, this is like very effective altruism, but like most of the time when you're like when you're deciding what you want to do, you look at the margins. You're like, what is my counterfactual impact of me going in? If you're trying to make the world better, right? Trying to make things better. If you're out for yourself, it's different. But if you're out for the collective, you're looking at what's the margin. So if I came to this, what bottleneck would be lessened? And so if I came to this, it's like a traffic jam of people trying to grab resources and play stupid games, right? So if I go there, then it's, well, there's a traffic jam, like let me drive to the traffic jam and see if I can help. Like, no, that's not how that works.
I mean, I don't know how you solve a traffic jam without. How do you go to the traffic jam and solve it without driving there?
You don't solve it at the traffic jam. You solve it at the upstream effect.
Right. Okay. You solve it as like, why are so many people driving cars?
So that's one of the upstreams of why are some people driving cars? Why is
where are they trying to go?
These
why
roads
too skinny?
Like, yeah, or usually it's like intersections, or the other one. I think like Google Maps probably like did a huge benefit to traffic jams where you know once they're taken to traffic consideration like the ETAs and stuff, then you get a better distribution of cars on the roads.
Right.
So like that's another big one. There's a lot of upstream effects that you can go, and I think it's the same here with the politics. Like the upstream politics is like the family social life, where it's and like there's a bunch of stuff, but like some of that is like when you're with people, like what are your friends group? Like I know just like being alive for a long time. There's so much stuff you learn from being alive for a long time, which is another episode. But I've seen a lot of my friends grow up and like we would have these like formative discussions when we're younger, and then like they lock in their opinions and like that's who they are for the next 20 years. And getting like those, like getting that stuff in early, I think is really important. And I don't want to say education, like I don't want to call this education because I think like not all the stuff is from school. Like a lot of the stuff is from like you're a person and you're born like wanting to live, and then at some point you lose that for a lot of people.
Well, look, you're born kind of wanting to explore the world and discover and like optimism, like openly look outwards, and then
like update and
meet the world in all of these ways in which it's less exciting than you thought it was.
Yeah, and like I think people start slowly piece off their soul, like they start to sell their soul. And I don't know, like it's like
selling implies a buyer, but maybe like chop off bits of their soul.
Well, there are buyers, right? Like every person is vying for your attention, vying for your for you to believe certain things or to be part of certain movements. Like nowadays we have a lot, like there are a lot of movements in the world,
right? So we're selling our soul to the movement, not to other people, but to the movement.
To the movement, or to there's like a million ways we do this all in small ways. A lot of it is like career, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing I don't like.
Right, we're selling our time in exchange for money in a career.
Yeah, or even like going to school. Okay, I'm gonna do this stuff. And like school, like I didn't do well in school because I didn't get that you were like I couldn't make that connection to give the person the thing they want, not what. Like forget the truth and just do the thing. And like that never landed well for me. I couldn't figure out how to do that without like losing myself. And I think a lot of people don't. Like I think they do make those decisions and then they wind up in certain ways. And then that's like that, that's contributing to this overall, that's contributing to the overall metacrisis, right? Like I see a lot of these people where they're like living certain lives, and I'm like, why are you doing any of this? And then like I try to have this discussion with them, like, oh, you don't get it. Like you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And now I'm in this situation, I don't know how to deal with it. I'm like, well, you're putting a lot of you're doing a lot of bad things and you're having bad results. And like you're not looking at the inputs of that. Like you're not looking at the decisions that you're making. And you're not looking at the way, like you're not willing to change your life. You're like, oh, but if I change my life, then all these things will happen. I'm like, yeah, like there's a cost to you're at a local maximum and you want to get to see. I always like resort to the rationalist terms because they're very objective, and I feel like I'm not insulting people as much. Or so I'm saying like you're an immoral person.
So what is the like? Let's talk solutions to Metacrisis.
Okay, yeah. So that's what we're gonna talk about. I feel like I've been rambling. Have I been rambling more?
I don't know. I feel like we're kind of triggery. We're kind of like, but whatever. Solutions to the Metacrisis.
Okay, solutions to the Metacrisis. Okay, so there's a bunch of things that are going on, but I think there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of perspectives. There's a lot of levels of abstraction. So I think we're going to pick the level of abstraction of the individual doing stuff, because there are people listening to this, and that's the level that we can change. So that's the level I'm going to look at, and then we're going to look at like how do you meaning make, how do you meaning make in a way that will have ripples or create stability or create the upstream effects, the abilities for people to solve these problems, not necessarily how to solve them themselves. So I think for me, like this is a perspective that I've been taking is that the world doesn't have, it's very hard to do anything because there's no like stability for the truth. So there's no, people aren't, like if you imagine a world where everybody is like looking at reality as best they can and speaking truth and trying to do their thing, and like not necessarily worrying about the effects so much, but worrying about more the process, more of like doing what's right, just like on a very basic ethical level for themselves and for the people around them, like not even on the global scale. If you had a world like that, it would be very easy to get things done, to get good things done, and it would be very hard to get bad things done, because you have to like convince all these people, like let's say like to do another Holocaust, like you'd have to get everybody to like do this, and if everybody's living their life in a way that's very in truth and very compassionate for the people around them, it's very hard to do a Holocaust going. But it's very easy to solve, even to solve a bigger problem, would be very easy because the whole thing gets lit up. And so I think like you want all of these levels to be like that. So you want the individual level to be like that, you want the family level to be like that, you want the, like, let's say social group or clan or whatever to be like that. You want the province, the country, the international country. You want all those things to be on that level, and I think the main thing to do is to start on the smallest, like start on the thing that you can do. So we're all people, like everyone is a person, and they have individual actions that they do throughout the day, and you want to start to notice those actions and see what it is that you are doing. And like there's like this, like Plato or Socrates, I can remember, where you want to do the thing that if everybody did it, it would be good. And so there is something like that of, where it's a little more metaphysical or abstract level that you want to be working on. Mm-hmm. But you want to be able to, you want to start on that level and like take that level seriously, even if the effects aren't that important. Because a lot of times like these small things are very unimportant.
I feel like there's a missing step here of like, this is interesting. So I want to be like, wherever you are, freeze, because and freeze and take stock, like take it, like start with what you can do requires you to know what you can do. And I suspect there's a lot of people prior to the place of knowing what they can do. And that's, in that sense, the freeze or the like pay attention in some way is a really important step for knowing what to do.
Yeah. And then I like that. It's like freeze, like actually like think about a process thing you're doing. And then I think the big step as well that a lot of people skip out on is after you're done, debrief. Right. Like, so what did you do, and what do you think the impact is, and see if you can like test it or like follow the impact a little bit. Because I think a lot of people, like, if you don't have the skill of being able to actually being able to see what you're going to do before you do it, and then see what happens after, you can't do anything. And if you can't do it on the small level, you can't do it on the big level. So like, we used to call this, I had this friend who used to call it like nerd sniping, where someone would ask like a question, like a very like small question that's like very complicated about a thing that doesn't matter, right? Like whatever it was, like the shopping carts, like what's the expected value calculation on putting away your shopping cart? Right. So this is like one of these things that's like very small. Like, I don't think, you putting away your shopping cart isn't going to change the outcome of the Metacrisis, possibly, right? But it lets you, first off, it lets you like actually like think through a problem, and you can actually take up so much amount of space with the shopping carts, right? Because there's like, you go to a store, like there's a bunch of shopping carts, nobody's really paying attention, nobody's bothering you. There's like all these things you can, like all these different like moves you can make within the context of the shopping cart, and you're pretty free to do a lot of it. And you could even just like sit there and watch what happens if you wanted to, right? I'm not saying like you should take a shopping cart and put in a parking spot and see what happens, because it's a little evil, but you could do that, and it's not that costly. And like when you're playing with this and you're thinking it through, and you see how complex something like a scenario like this is, and how to live in a way that doesn't, live in a way where you can continue to live, or like it's not too draining on you, and that it has this net positive for everyone else, or and how does it play, has a net positive on for other people, how does it play into like the systems, like you can learn, like practice your systems thinking, your paradigmatic, like like all these different levels you're allowed to just work with, and you can take these like small experiments and start like using your everyday experiences as experiments for getting competent at metacrisising. And so to me, that's the main thing that I'm looking at. Like that's the thing that I want to do, and that's the thing I look at. I think if we could do this, it's again, it's the upstream effect that you do this, you live this way. Our generation is like, okay, we're making these sacrifices, whatever it is. Like for me, a lot of this stuff is, I'm making a lot of these sacrifices. Like I'm not working on this higher scale because I want to be competent at what I'm doing more than I want to be doing the bigger things. And for my kid, when he grows up in my house, he's growing up in this environment where this kind of competency is normal, right? Which is not how I grew up, and not how most people grow up. And so when he grows up normal and he goes to school, and then he goes out in the world and he sees stuff, he's like, oh, well, like we'll do it this way. Like this is how these things work, and this is how this work, because he's already got so many of those iterations, and so many of those things are thought out, and knows how to think and all that stuff. When you have a generation of those people, you're going to say, oh, how are you going to solve the problem? Like, don't worry about it. They'll figure it out. Like they got it, right? Like they're, everyone's an Elon Musk. Like how many problems are you going to have left? Anyway, that's my really long speech on why you should just like do the small things,
Competence on a small scale.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like, as practical, like you probably shouldn't be like, not necessarily like tell people because they'll make fun of you and stuff. And you do got to worry about like the social backlash, but like also notice that's a huge thing or like I'll do small things sometimes where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this thing. It's like 2 seconds and it has like this, 10-second impact on people. So it's like a net positive. And then you see who gives you shit, like how they're reacting to it. And however they're doing it, like those are microcosms of the bigger thing. And when you learn how to like start to deal with and to grapple with those problems, on the smaller scale, like you can make mistakes and you can lose, and it's not that costly. And then once you start to get like positive, then you can go. And some things can only be solved at scale, and that's true, but you don't know that until you
well, there's this idea of wicked problems. Are you familiar with wicked problems?
Yeah.
There's like 4 or 5 factors, one of which is you've never done anything like it before. You have no idea like what the solution will look like. The problem is pressing and dangerous. I think there's a couple more, but essentially it's just a really, really hard puzzle to work with. The solution to wicked problems is to like start cracking down the walls to wicked problems. Like maybe you've worked on something similar, or maybe there is a way you can work on something similar, and maybe you like it's important, but like you can get a vantage point on it. Maybe like trying to give yourself some of the resources down the ways in which a wicked problem is less than wicked.
Right. And a lot of times, even the problem, like the way you solve like complex, often like really hard problems are really hard because you don't know what the problem is, or you can't formulate it properly.
Right.
And like a big way of, right, what does it say? A problem formulated correctly is already half solved.
Maybe even more than half, but yeah.
Yeah, like once it's there, and then it's like, oh well, this is the problem. Like I'll just find the guy who's the best at it and get him to help me. Right? Like you don't actually even, that's the thing. Like if you know what the problem is, most of the time you don't even have to solve it. Like someone else will solve it for you. But it's
right, because you can go and say, hey doctor, my knee hurts in this way exactly, and the doctor will be like, oh, that thing seems broken, let's
right.
The doctor knows how to solve it once you know the problem. If you're like, it hurts, the doctor will have to be like, okay, where? And then you're going to be like, oh, here, and the doctor has to go, oh, that's your knee. What does it feel like? Where does it hurt? And like, okay, that's like a diagnostic process just to get to the actual shape of the problem.
Yeah. So like, yeah, there's a diagnostic. Yeah, the diagnostic process. It happens in house all the time, whereas like the patient comes in and then he's like formulates it wrong, formulates wrong, and then like the right answer is like, here's the pill, you're done. Like very easy. And I think a lot of these problems, I think a lot of the metacrisis problems are going to be, they're more complex than that, I think, because they're probably multiple of these interacting with each other. But like another thing is like about these problems, like these complex problems where it's not a singular problem, but it's a bunch of it's like there's comorbidity where the problems are interacting with each other, and each problem is making it harder to solve. Like when it hits a certain point, it's beyond your comprehension to solve it. And I think there, the only way you can solve it is you just solve whatever's in front of you.
Right. And start working in groups. Like maybe beyond one human.
Yeah. I'm talking like Adam, like on the person level, because I'm not wanting to get into groups with people that can't do this. Right. Like a group of people trying to solve a problem where none of the people can do this. That's not like they're not doing anything, or maybe they are, I don't know, but I'm not like no, like I want everybody to be able to solve the problems in front of them, because it's
an interesting point that at some point problems do become bigger than us, particularly as we want to try and tackle planetary scale, global scale, space travel scale problems. They are getting bigger than the size of one tiny human.
And it does make sense to coordinate with people as well, but you want to be able to coordinate with people that are able to solve problems and are thinking about these things. And like this is a big thing, like for us working together, is that I love that, like I don't have to explain so much to you, and you're not hiding a lot of information from me. There's a flow, and there's an understanding that I get with you, where I know, like, just like the way you interact, the way you respond with things, I know that you've been doing this for a long time. And it's not the same set of problems that I've been working on, but like that's good. At that point, the diversity is actually like helpful, because these like meta, like the ways we start to do, and like the character traits that you need, and there's a lot of underlyingness that is in common, that we're able to coordinate without like even just like right away. And I felt that way with Romeo as well. Whereas it was like, just like when we talked to him, it was like very quick to get to, okay, like I get where you are, I get what you're doing, and I get like a bunch of your past experience already, and it's just like you're immediately able to start coordinating, because we've already been coordinating our whole lives, we just only met now. And just to take it like too far, because that's what we like to do.
Right, do that.
This is what religion did in the olden days, right? So
kind of like to coordinate people.
Yeah, so you have like the, because like let's say like like European and whatnot, American, they're Christian, right? So it's like the love of Jesus, and it's all these Christian things. They actually, I should switch to Jews because that's my actual experience. Like there's a thing with Jews where I could also go to anywhere in the world where there are Jews, which is like most places, meet the Jews there, and I can immediately tell what kind of person this person is just by having like a couple-minute conversation with them. We call it bageling. But
bageling, but all right.
Yeah, so it's more like the more orthodox you get, the more you're able to, like, the more it's really cool actually. The more orthodox, like the more religious you get, the more, at least for me, because that was my background. Probably other people have different, but the more religious you get, the more you can zone in on exactly what kind of person this is, what are their beliefs, how do they live in the world, what experiences they had. Like there's just so much information you can get straight away, because we have a very strict set of books that you follow, and to the extent that you follow it or where you're off lets the other person know, like, oh, this is the thing.
So what I'm hearing is Daniel has discovered the pure platonic form of rabbi, and then deviation from the pure form is information.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean it's not that clean, but yeah, like practically speaking it's not that clean, but yeah, but essentially yeah, like because you learn.
I do think I do a similar thing when working with people. Like there is a perfect form of many, like even the quality of good has a perfect form, and to the extent that we can imagine it, it's real in the imagined form, but then finding it in the world, it's always kind of a bit more muddy.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that the only way you really, because it's like it winds up being like so pure and specific, and ineffable, that the only way you could actually discover it is if you lived that life.
Right.
So it winds up being like this like weird conspiracy with people that you've never met.
I mean, I meet other people who wear hats, and we have like a secret connection just because we
right.
Like the ways
mustaches are like that too.
Yeah, mustaches. Like it's uncanny the ways in which humans can connect with each other.
Yeah, I had a mustache for a little bit. It was a little intense because I'm not a mustache guy. I just had a mustache for a while. Yeah. So I felt like an imposter.
I want to go back like 2 minutes and sit on that thing you said, that like you find it easy to work together, right?
Yeah. I mean, the stuff we're doing is hard, but the togetherness is much easier.
Yeah, I'm like hesitant to leave that one sitting there because I suspect there's a lot of work that I'm doing to translate.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think I have an over-proportionate share of translating work that I am doing.
Oh.
Oh. Right, that's why I want to name
articulate better.
Well, I don't know what to do about it. I think I actually do this with everyone. I translate with everyone all the time, which makes me a good translator and a little bit more hidden in the world, a little bit more invisible because I'm doing all this translating. But something to like bookmark for a future episode of like, maybe look at that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it, right? Like this is Peter Limber called it metamonics. I forgot the term he used. There's a really good word for it, but it's like code switching, and it's
right. I do lots of that.
Yeah, so that's, but like to me, that's part of it, right? Like I do that a lot as well for people. And I do think I do it a bunch here, but I have like a consistent output. So there's like a way, there's like a thing I'm trying to, there's like this thing in the middle, right, where everybody's doing this thing and everybody's translating. And I think there's a natural, there's like a sort of natural shelling point for what the language is going to be.
I don't know. I don't know if there is or isn't, but okay.
Right, because everybody, if you think about this way, right, everybody's translating everybody else, and where does everybody's language come from? So it comes from like their idiosyncratic circumstances, plus, what is the natural shelling points for things. So, when people make stuff up, you can make up names that make sense, or you can make up names that don't make sense. Make up names that make sense, that would make sense to other humans that haven't heard it before, or names that wouldn't make sense to other humans that have heard it before. So the more that you can speak the language that is the easiest to learn, that is most intuitive, that is the most, encompasses the most complexity while being the simplest to actually experience, while being in line with all the values that we want to have, that would be the natural shelling point. That would be the thing that we would all be doing. So that's the new religion, right? Like the Vervaeke's religion, that's not a religion. The the psychotech religion. So that's the thing that I'm trying to translate to. That's the thing I'm trying to live in. That's the thing I'm trying to be, that person. So when everybody's translating what I'm saying, there's this middle. I'm not saying I'm doing it 100% or even 1%, but I don't know, like that's what I'm doing for, because I've already taken into consideration the fact that everybody else is going to be translating me. So I'm also going to be translating them, but also what am I speaking that they're translating? And the other thing is, there's another cool thing here. When you're translating people, you're learning, you're learning a new language as well, right?
Yep.
And so like I think it's important for us in these spaces and people in the Metacrisis to be speaking the language that you want other people to learn. So it's not just what language is easiest for you to express, which is how you're going to start with, right? Because you don't know that many languages when you start. But as you go, you want to start picking and choosing the best terms, best concepts, and like building your own language. And then that's the thing that people are going to learn, that the other people that are going to want to listen to you and want to learn from you, they're also learning that language. So learning the content, learning context, learning the language, learning the way the language is executed.